morning, everyone. I'm going to speak in English because my Turkish is a little bit rusty, so I'm going to spare you to listen to me in Turkish. Thank you also to the organizers for having me here. I mean, coming to Turkey and being, especially, being in Istanbul, it's always a fantastic pleasure, for me. I mean, great food, great people, great talent. I mean, especially, in this room, and an amazing amount of energy. And speaking about energy, I would like to play a short video just to energize you a little bit further and also to set a scene for my speech.
Today, we are announcing the Climate Pledge. The Climate Pledge is to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement 10 years early. Amazon becomes the first signatory to the Climate Pledge. We want to use our scale and our scope to lead the way.
The sound was a little bit low, but no worries. I can tell you what was said. And just for those of you who don't know who these people in this video were, on the left side you have Jeff Bezos, the founder and CEO of Amazon. On the right side you have Christiana Figueres, the former UN chief for climate change at the United Nations, and the architect of the Paris Agreement, and especially now the head of the Global Optimism Foundation. So why am I telling you this, and what has been said in this video? Let me just summarize it in a few words. In this video, Jeff Bezos has basically announced that Amazon is going to be the first signatory of this climate pledge to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement 10 years early. And Global Optimism, the organization of Christiana, is managing this pledge. So why is this important, and what are we promising in this pledge? Because a pledge is at the end of the day a promise. The promises are mainly three. The first one is to measure and to report your greenhouse gas emissions. The second one is actually to do something about it and to reduce these emissions in line with the Paris Climate Agreement. And the third one is to offset remaining emissions, which are unavoidable in terms of business. So if there's anything left, emissions have to be offset with nature-based solutions. And I'm going now through my presentation. I will be telling you what this climate pledge basically means for Amazon. And if I would have to choose, because you're all busy, this conference takes place the whole day, many messages, many PowerPoints, everything else. If I could choose what you will remember from this speech, I would say that the thing number one is you should remember that Amazon is fully committed in reaching this target 10 years ahead of schedule, which basically means 2040 instead of 2050. We are going to use our scale and inventiveness, and this is the point number two, in order to achieve this. And number three, especially important here in Turkey, we would be delighted, we would be ecstatic if other companies, especially European companies or companies based in Turkey, could join us in this pledge. So it's open for everyone, to sign up to. So if you want to bring this message back into your organization, I would be happy to hear from you, and you will have my contact details at the end. In terms of what we are doing at Amazon, 2 years ago, we announced a non-time-bound pledge, basic promise, to achieve 100% renewable energy. It was at the early stages of our sustainability programs, and the lack of a specific deadline at that time was due to the factors that it's actually very difficult to do these steps for a complex company like Amazon. We are not a company which shifts only data from one server to another one. We are actually moving billions and billions and billions of parcels from one location to another. And the footprint of such an operation is considerably different. So in order to reach our path to net zero, we have now announced in September of this year that we are going to reach 80% of our target by 2024 and the remaining 100% or in total 100% by 2030. Energy and especially renewable energies are so key in order to mitigate and in order to limit carbon emissions, and that's why we are focusing on this quite comprehensively. A second element which we have announced here is the world's largest order of electric vehicles. Jeff Bezos has announced the purchase of 100,000 EVs, electric vehicles, which will be deployed as early as 2021. That will be the first, a wave of electric vehicles basically hitting the roads globally. So all these measures are not only for the US, they are being, rolled out, across the globe. And we are currently mapping, the countries, where it makes most sense and, where the policies are most conducive in order to do this. The remaining vehicles will be rolled out from basically 2022 until 2030, so for a total of 100,000. This is going to basically add, this is not the only thing we're doing, this is just going to add to the existing programs which we have already in place with the European manufacturers, where we are purchasing vehicles and we're deploying them onto roads. So in terms of, let's say, the impact of this, I have asked the teams who have worked on this project to run some calculations, and I was told that these 100,000 electric vehicles will reduce the carbon emissions by 4 million tons per year. Yesterday I actually didn't know what that means. 4 million tons per year, of carbon emissions are probably no concept for anyone here in the room. So I went onto a very smart tool online, and I have checked, and that means removing 850,000 vehicles from the road for 1 year. So that's quite an impressive number. The key element of this and the underlying importance is not only carbon emissions and the vehicles. The underlying importance is that we are sending a strong signal to the market. With this purchase of almost $500 million US, we are sending the signal to the market that those who produce green technologies, those who produce electric vehicles in this case, need to be ready. They need to be ready for a transition. And those companies which will be signing the pledge, those companies, they will be helping us in sending this signal to global markets. However, technology is one thing, but technology cannot solve all our problems. I know that nowadays we are stuck and glued to our phones and our computers all day long, but we need also nature. And this is why we have announced the third pillar of this climate pledge, which is basically an investment in reforestation. Reforestation is not only important because it helps the nature to regenerate, but especially reforestation in urban environments helps to stabilize temperatures. For example, in a city, there are measurements, if you have part of the city where there are trees and another part where there are only buildings, usually the temperature is cooler where there are trees. Trees help to remove pollution in a city environment. Trees also improve the value of a road. I recently I have participated in a meeting with the Italian government, where the Italian government is basically aiming in centralizing the planning of urban reforestation. So basically, in plain English, basically the planting of trees in a city. And one of the aspects which the Italian government was actually also focusing on, it was not the main aspect, it was one of the aspects, is that trees in an urban environment raise the value of real estate stock. Because if you have a fantastic boulevard, if you have a fantastic avenue in Istanbul, with trees, the real estate stock has one value. Without trees, the value is different. It depends from city to city, but for all these good reasons, we are coming together, and I'm not saying we are here to improve the real estate value, but it's also a reason which very often is a pull factor for real estate companies in order to invest in these. So they are the ones who will be convinced by these arguments. So in this aspect, we're also rolling this out globally. So the same like for the electric vehicles, we are now mapping together with the Nature Conservancy countries around the world where parts of this investment will go. You've seen now 3 flagships projects, let's say, which we have announced, in September. But that's not the only thing we're doing. So this comes on top of all the initiatives, which Amazon runs. And Amazon is quite widespread. It has its own operations. It has operations of its suppliers. It has operations of the sellers who sell on the marketplace. So with our programs, we are addressing all of these. And one which is particularly dear to me is to mention the packaging reduction which we are undertaking. And these are multi-year programs. So these are programs which are in place since at least 10 or 15 years and at a different scale. There are programs which aim at basically making packaging more frustration-free. Have you ever received, this parcel at home, or have you ever purchased a product and you can't open it? So there's plastic in the middle. You just can't do anything with it. So we are aiming of removing that for our customers. The second program which I like to mention here today is the SIOC program. It's an acronym which stands for Shipment in Own Container, with which we are working together with companies and with manufacturers around the world in order to help them to design the packaging for e-commerce. Because e-commerce is fundamentally different when it comes to packaging. We don't need what I always call romance packaging. So if you go into a toy shop, and you see the toys usually have plastic around, they have the cardboard in the back, probably they have also an entrance, where the child can touch and play with the product before purchasing it. We don't need all that. We don't need a plastic, on the parcel. What we need is very simple. We need a good description of the product on our homepage, and we need 3 or 4 high-resolution pictures. That's all we need. The packaging itself can be very plain. And one of the manufacturers here on the slide, and by the way, my former employer as well, they have done it with us. So they have, so you can see the overbox over there where it says TV, that's missing here, and the product goes out directly in a secure Samsung box in this case. But at Amazon, it's not only about packaging, of course. We are increasingly venturing into the manufacturing of goods ourselves. So if you are, I'm not sure, if these products are available here in Turkey, but we are a manufacturer of textiles, of fashion with Amazon Fashion. We have our own devices. Just think about an Amazon Kindle, the e-reader. Think about the Fire tablets. Think about the Alexa voice assistants. Food as well. We have our own brands. And for all of these products, we are basically rolling out programs in order to ensure that these products are sustainable from every perspective. So we have announced the chemicals policy, for example. We have announced the palm oil policy, animal welfare policies, which we are cascading down, to our suppliers, so across the globe. And we aim into operating, in accordance to one, main standard. There will be regional differences, but we aim always, to basically take the strongest standard as our guiding principle when we are rolling out these products. Another example of where we are, or where we have already deployed renewable energies is, for example, our rooftops. So you may know that Amazon operates fulfillment warehouses from which we ship our products to the final customers. They have different sizes and shapes. And what we are doing across Europe and the US and also in other regions is we're deploying this renewable energy installations, in this case, these photovoltaic panels on the roof. So these projects are quite small in entity. And what do I mean with that? These projects are basically, there for the needs of that facility. But what we are increasingly doing, when policies allow us, is to develop utility-scale renewables projects, which basically are 100, 150, 200 times bigger than what you see here on the roof. We have just announced very recently, it was actually just a Monday this week, one in Spain, and in a couple of weeks ago we have announced one in Scotland. So for example, the one in Spain is a great example of where we say we need conducive policies in order to be able to do these projects. So when we are reaching out, when we are doing the mapping across regions, across states, the first thing which we're looking at, is it actually financially viable? Is it possible to do this here? In Spain, for example, until very recently, there was a solar tax which made it financially not viable to develop a project like that. So since that tax is gone, we're able basically to deploy that. So the importance on policies I cannot stress and I cannot stress enough. We've spoken a lot about environment here, and environment is definitely important. I mean, if you would be in Madrid now, where the United Nations Conference of the Parties is taking place, you would see it. I mean, the city is buzzing with people. Everyone is focused on environmental issues. And by the way, I'm going there next week to follow the proceedings. But we are also investing heavily on our social responsibility side. And especially if you look at safe workplaces, at empowering women, and freely chosen employment, these may be topics which are a given. They may be obvious. I mean, for example, in Turkey, because I mean, you have very high standards, on all of these parameters. But they are not obvious, and then they shouldn't be taken for granted in other regions. And this is why we are working with our customers and with our suppliers in this case to roll these programs out at a global stage. We have recently announced a new program with which we give visibility to the broader public of our supplier base. So if you Google Amazon Supplier Map, you will probably land on our sustainability page, and from there you will land on a map where you can basically see where our suppliers are located. You can see what size that supplier is. You can also see what the percentage is between women and men who work in this as a supplier, in order to see if there is a balance or if the figures are completely screwed. And that's why we are using so much data in order to assess and to cut through complexity. And data brings me to one of my final thoughts, to share here with you. Data at Amazon is not only there, to populate a dashboard or, maybe, to have a nice report, at the end of the year. Data is there at Amazon to drive decisions. So in order to make this climate pledge announcement, which I showed you at the very beginning, teams across Amazon have worked for 3 years in order to work on a life cycle assessment tool, a carbon accounting tool, with which we have basically collected data, built the models which are necessary to understand the complexity of Amazon, and then derive decisions from there. So what these tools are basically doing is they're connecting science with technology and with customer obsession, which is always the point of where Amazon starts its work first. So we put the customer first, we think, what do our customers want? And from that need, we work backwards in order to develop the plan to be achieved. So in terms of this specific tool here, this tool runs on Amazon Web Services servers, and it's basically there to connect operational data from our company, across our company. to financial data, to external scientific data. So with these three elements, we basically calculate our carbon footprint, and we give to teams internally the tools in order to understand the impact of decisions which they need. So we give them a very, very high resolution of data in order to make their decisions at scale. And let me make a concrete example. So if you think about the Amazon Alexa voice assistant, so the teams there will be able to assess the plastic they will be using for that specific, Alexa device. They will be able to understand what the impact of that is overall for the company and for the company target and for the targets of those teams. They will be able to understand what every single connection of that device to the server will be, how much energy will be consumed from that, what the packaging will look like, what the packaging emissions look like, and also what mode of transport is best in order to ship that product from a location to another one. So all this is available now to our internal teams, and they're all being triggered towards working in achievement of our overall company goal. By analyzing so much data, sometimes you find surprises. And the surprise which we found, which was quite counterintuitive, was that actually same-day delivery is the lowest carbon option. If you look at some, media outlets, out there, usually, same-day delivery is being perceived as the environmental polluter per se. However, with our calculations, we were able to establish that same-day delivery usually happens in a situation where the product is already very close to the customer. Same-day delivery does not mean that the product is being flown in from Paris to Istanbul because you want to have it tomorrow. It means that the product is most likely already in Istanbul, and therefore the same-day delivery is the lowest carbon option. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much.